Thanks for checking out our podcast. If you are interested in learning more about writing, go check out our syndication page, seriouswriter.com, where you can find resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and the Brew and Ink podcast. Again, seriouswriter.com. We thank you for listening.
And welcome, faithful listeners, back to another Brew and Ink podcast. I'm here today with Britt.
What's up?
And myself, SM Freehand. We are missing Katie. She has to deal with some things on her end, but she will be with us probably on the next recording. She's definitely with us on the next Mandalorian episode.
Oh, yeah.
That will be coming out.
Booyah.
But we're excited to be here with you guys because we are coming at you with another chapter in our Hero is a four-letter word dinosaur Western. This could be getting close. We're getting close to wrapping up. I don't want to, spoil anything before we get to the story part. But we're already talking about what are the next things we could be possibly writing.
What's season 7 gonna be?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about it. I always like the brainstorming part. It's like
fun.
endless possibilities at that point.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, the sky's the limit. How do we rein ourselves in and get something that's a good concrete storyline?
Yeah.
Those are always the fun parts to me.
Yeah. Me too.
But speaking of creating and the creative process for writing, we've got good little, I guess you call it a holiday, more of a...
it's technically a holiday. Yeah.
Coming up, MLK Jr. Day. He was a prolific writer, and we were looking up some of his quotes, and we came across one that piqued our interest, and we decided, hey, let's talk about that, and then that'll bring us to a broader topic of writing with emotion, writing from feeling, and how do you, A, as a writer do that, and B, as personal, me and Britt, how do we kind of tap into what emotions seem to work best for us? So we'll read that quote by Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, Martin Luther King Jr., the holiday, I think it's his birthday. It's around the time of his birthday. We take the Monday. We take the Monday, that's whatever the third Monday of the month or
January,
whatever.
Yeah.
So and I always try to take some time and reflect around the holiday, just like I do with Christmas or Easter or Thanksgiving. The purpose of a holiday like that is to reflect on whatever that is, 4th of July or whatever it might be. So, to me, it bothers me when people celebrate a holiday, but they don't really celebrate what the holiday is about.
Yes.
It always bothers me. So I do the same thing with Martin Luther King Jr. I think about just the history of racism and the history of civil rights movements and all sorts of things that have happened in our country. And I was a history major first before anything else that I did. So, there's a lot for me to think about. And one of my favorite books is A Testament of Hope, which is the collected writings of Martin Luther King Jr. And it is a thick book.
I think we have that one on our bookshelf too. Yeah. It's really big, like almost Les Mis type.
Oh,
big.
it's huge, but it's got every sermon, every writing, because he wrote out his sermons. Like he didn't simply just get up there and wing it, which is nothing. I don't have a problem with that if you're a speaker. I'm just saying he wrote it out. Like he wrote stuff out. And when I was in high school, I actually had a copy of his speech in 1963 of the March on Washington. Like I actually had a copy of that as a poster on my wall.
That's cool.
Which is fairly odd for a white dude to have that in high school in like suburban rural Georgia. Okay. There were maybe 3 black people in my whole high school. Okay. So, I mean, like it was probably odd. Looking back on it, I didn't think it was odd at the time because in my family, it was a topic that we talked about.
Yeah.
And in our church and all that kind of stuff, it was a topic we talked about. And so it was something I was interested in. So all that to say is I was just thinking like, well, maybe we could find a quote or just see if Martin Luther King Jr. ever did talk about writing.
Right.
He probably did in that thick book, right?
Yeah.
And of course he did, but the main quote that I found says, if I wish to compose or write or pray or preach well, I must be angry. Then all the blood in my veins is stirred, and my understanding is sharpened. So that's the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. And he's talking about writing. He's like, if I wish to compose or write or pray or preach well,
right,
then I must be angry.
It's got to be stirred up.
I've got to be stirred up. Then if I'm angry, if it's something that makes me angry, then all the blood in my veins is stirred and my understanding is sharpened, which is really odd, the kind of the choice of words to me, because a lot of times when you think of someone who's angry, they're not really thinking straight.
No, they don't. You wouldn't say that's someone with a sharpened understanding,
right?
Usually.
But if you know anything about Martin Luther King Jr., then what he means is that he wanted to talk and write and communicate about topics that were important enough to get outraged about.
Right.
And I'm not saying everybody has to feel this way. I'm just saying that this is something that was important to him. He didn't want to just talk about anything. He wanted to talk about and communicate about things that made him angry, injustice and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And so, but for us as writers, I think it connects to kind of that age-old quote that says, "No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader."
Yeah.
Like there's something when we write
that you've got to connect with.
We've got to connect with it. Yeah, as a writer, we can't just simply. I mean, I guess you can if your job is just to write like a textbook and you're writing information or something, or but with what we're talking about with fiction,
even nonfiction,
and a lot of nonfiction, like if you don't care about it,
then why does the reader care about it?
Then why should the reader care about it?
Yeah.
And that passion is going to come through your writing. That passion is going to come through what you write.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a good kind of topic to talk about, because we want to be writers because someone else wrote something that affected us.
Yeah.
And so we want to do that to other people. So how do you do that unless you write about something you care about, right?
Right. And it's interesting. I know for myself personally, if I am in a state of like being upset or maybe I've had some argument with someone, I do want to process, and whether I process mentally or if I sit down and write out, it does tend to almost give you that jumping off point to really get some momentum behind what you're writing. And it may not just all be about whatever you're upset about or angry about, but it'll get you to that point of, and like if I have an argument with my wife, I find I tend to go and do the dishes, and I do it like I start cleaning and I'm like cleaning out of frustration or whatever and doing the dishes, but I'm like sitting there going, wow, this is a great motivator. I don't know why is it when I'm upset I want to like focus that energy into something productive. And I think it's really what he's talking about here is he's finding this energy, he's finding a way to ignite within himself. He said it gets my blood boiling, it's getting my mind focused, and then he's using that in a productive way to construct something that's got emotions behind it. But it's not always anger for me. So a lot of times when I'm feeling nostalgic, or if I'm feeling like I just watched a movie that was like really emotional or sad, that's another time that I find, man, I should go write right now, because I'm in that state. I'm in that like mindset that tends to benefit me and probably a lot of other writers too. But personally for myself, I know that when I'm in that nostalgic kind of feeling, that's when I'm wanting to almost like translate that from emotion into words.
Absolutely. I think that, like I said, we write because someone else's writing has affected us.
Yeah.
And no one wants to read a story that goes, everything just kind of was dull and worked out today, just exactly the way it was supposed to. I mean, no one gets inspired by that. No one connects with that.
Right.
And for us, we have to realize that, we have to tap into universal emotions, even though we're telling specific stories. Like we're telling specific stories about specific people doing specific things, and it seems very individualistic and not everyone flies a spaceship, or I mean, like that's not something that is common, and yet you can still put universal emotion to things. Well, I'm thinking as a songwriter, a lot of times when I was angry or sad or inspired or whatever it was, whatever the topic was, I was inspired by something, and then I would try to put that emotion into music, and that combination of music and words. I mean, how many songs are there about heartbreak, or how many songs are there about the first love, or how many nostalgia? I mean, these things keep popping up, and we will continue to write about these topics forever.
Yep.
And poems and books, and I mean, like these are universal things that matter to us, and I just think it's a great, it was just a great kind of topic for us to talk about tonight, because I think justice is something too. Like, what is unjust? What makes us feel like this world is unjust? And shouldn't that motivate us to fight for something good? Like, we want to. I know it's cheesy for some people maybe, but we still want to believe in good versus evil. We still want to, I mean, that's why superhero movies, there's dark ones and The Watchmen, and I love all that stuff too. I mean, it's fun. I mean, not fun, but it's interesting to kind of take a, what are The Boys or the whatever, boys, like it's really disturbing. And I get that. And there's a certain place for that. But at the same time, the ones that make billions of dollars are the ones that are still people fighting for something good, and so anyway, all that to say is, no tears in the reader, no tears in the writer,
and it goes back also to the save the cat kind of mentality. Like, it's got to be something universal that your reader can connect with to be a motivation for whether you're writing for your character or whether you're just writing a nonfiction to bring up a cause that's a good cause, or even if you're just telling your memoir, like, why is it interesting? What emotions are your readers connecting with in your memoir that makes them want to come back and finish the next chapter, finish the book? And I think being able to not just write from a place of emotion, but also being able to connect your reader with that place of emotion is important.
Yeah. Benjamin Franklin has another great quote I've liked, that he says, either write something worth reading or do something worth writing.
Oh, that's good.
In other words, like, if we're not living life and connected with life as writers, and there have been great writers who just sat in their house and never did anything, and they just, their imagination runs wild and they still connect with people. I mean, I'm not saying, but there's something about living life that connects you to things that matter. You realize after a certain amount of time, this is what matters. And then, we have people who live through, I mean, how many writers, it's kind of a cliche, right? They live through traumatic events, and they I'll have all this pain, and they write from the pain, and yet we connect with that, know. So, and I think for Martin Luther King Jr., it was injustice that angered him. But I like the way you said it. Like, he was able to channel that, use that energy, and channel that into something constructive.
Yeah.
And I think we can do that in sports, right? I mean, I'm going to go run. I'm going to work out. I'm going to practice this physical thing and use that energy. And instead of being abusive to somebody, like, I'm going to channel it into this area. So.
And then that's going to help keep my body and mind healthy as well. Another king that kind of came through a traumatic instance in their life was Stephen King, when he was hit on the side of the road while he was walking. And that really changed the way that he wrote. He kind of started, he felt like he had to almost reconnect with how he wrote, because he got sober and he was looking at his past work and stuff like that. But from that, he was able to write a really influential book called On Writing. That is highly recommended for anyone that wants to be a writer. Even if you're not a fan of Stephen King or you're not a fan of horror, he was able to really channel kind of his process of where he came from, and then how that big moment in his life impacted him and changed kind of where he was going or how he was approaching his life and his writing style.
Absolutely.
If you want to read a good book related to Martin Luther King, there's always Nick Stone's Dear Martin. And Dear Justice, the follow-up book, came out last year. And then the one that you're mentioning with all of Martin Luther King's writing.
Yeah, that's more a research book than it is. I mean, you could, I guess, just sit down
digest
and read it. But there's some great books on social justice or the civil rights movement. I mean, it's such a fascinating period of time.
Right.
There's so many great movies and books that have been done on it. So,
and not to get too much into politics here, but with everything that's been happening recently in our last couple months and year, it's very wise to study your history. Go back, look at your history, really understand, where we come from, where we going, where we at now. Because if you don't study your history, then history tends to repeat itself.
Yep.
And you don't get out of the cycle.
Yep, that's true.
Cheers to that. I'm going to finish up this Hefeweizen that we've been drinking on. This is a homemade Hefeweizen.
It's really good.
It's tasty too. I love the way it's got that the wheat in there rather than just being an oat grain. It's got wheat grain, and then it's got a really fruity yeast that pulls out kind of banana and those kind of esters, fruity esters in there. But now you've got something from Stillfire.
I do. Can I open it on the?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a Belgian from Stillfire. This is called the Swanee Devil. I don't know if that's the best name in the world, but but it is a nice brew.
So as we pour ourselves a beverage, you guys pour yourself a beverage and get ready to hear
No Place for Heroes.
No Place for Heroes, Chapter 12. This is going to be a good one, so buckle up and we'll see you guys on the other side.
Chapter 12, No Place for Heroes. The cold white dawn had shone over Pride's Creek for a half hour when Arthur sat in his office sipping hot coffee. Callie's file rested on the corner of the desk. Arthur took a deep breath, enjoyed the brief moment of calm when he could think. The door to his office burst open, and so did his eyelids. His hands went reflexively to the pistol at his side. The old woman stood there, her leather duster hanging loose, her pistols visible. There was a red scarf around her throat. Callie. She took a deep breath. They have him. He squinted. Who? Callie bared her teeth. You know damn well who. Arthur sighed. Cecil. She took a step, her hands on her pistols. He didn't need to ask the next question, but it was his job. Who has him? She said, Whitaker. His lapdogs came and got him last night, set fire to my house. Arthur sat up. Your house? You all right? Callie chuckled, void of humor. No. What are you doing just sitting there? He took a deep breath, then nodded at her pistols, because going half-cocked isn't the answer. If I roll up on Whitaker, make some accusation, I gotta have proof. You have proof that it was Whitaker? Arthur gestured at the dossier. You both made some enemies along the way. With all that digging Whitaker and the investigator did, who knows? Someone might have found you. Come looking. Callie shook her head. Ain't been long enough for someone to come so far. Arthur rubbed his jaw. I hate to say this, Callie, but how do you know he ain't? He spread his hands. One brow hiked up. Dead? The ice in her eyes was colder than he had ever seen in a person, man or woman, like the color washed away. I tracked footprints back to horses. Why would they drag away a dead body? People do crazy things, Arthur muttered. There was a heartbeat between them. I'm going to talk to Whitaker. You coming? Arthur winced. I don't know. They got a lot of evidence. Cecil's a wanted man. You the law, she said. It legal to take someone in the night? They didn't bring him here to you, the sheriff. He blinked. True. Callie pointed at the file. Would it matter if Cecil had reason for doing those things? He watched people do things to his people that no one should ever see. When the law wouldn't act, he acted. Arthur watched her. She lowered her head, and I helped him. I knew that feeling, the need. The same law that did nothing for what's right wanted to string him up for getting whatever justice he could get. So I saved him like he did me once. We kind of saved each other. Callie raised her gaze. You don't understand, she said. Probably good. Good you never saw what we seen, done what we done, 'cause it follows you. We thought we could run, come out here far away from everything, but you can't run. Arthur swallowed. Callie gave a sad grin. It's okay. I can't run from it, but you can stay here. Where I'm going ain't no place for heroes. She tugged on her red scarf and turned. Callie, wait. She paused at the door. Arthur stood. Let me get my coat. Callie rode Black Claw behind Arthur, who rode his own horse from the center of Pride's Creek, through the construction, following the incomplete road east to a workers' compound a quarter-mile away. A large warehouse rose from the snow in front of them, the scent of oil and fire carrying on the wind. To the south of the warehouse was a barrack for workers. To the north, a smaller building of finer materials and a sign that read Croatan Industry above the door. Workers milled about in the morning light. The sun shone bright and blinding, and Callie tilted her head so her hat protected her eyes. Arthur tried saying how he should handle this. He wouldn't put up with vigilante justice. She barely listened, barely felt the cold. At the same time, the sun didn't warm her. As they drew closer, workers stared at them. Voices yelled out. Within 50 yards, Whitaker emerged from the door underneath Croatan Industry. He wore a long black coat and hat. 2 men walked with him, wearing pistols and carrying rifles. Arthur and Callie stopped within 10 yards from where Whitaker and his men waited. Whitaker smiled at Callie but said, Sheriff, what brings you out this morning? Arthur stepped down from his horse, holding the reins. Callie did the same. Arthur said, Callie says someone took Cecil last night. The old Indian? Whitaker said. That's the one, Arthur said. You happen to know where he is? Whitaker gazed at Callie. I do. Callie tensed, forced herself to calm. Arthur hesitated through a deep breath. You took him? I did, Whitaker said. Arthur grunted. That ain't your job, Whitaker. Whitaker's smile widened. You sure about that? Arthur stuck out his chest. The silver star gleamed. Callie wanted to tell him that wouldn't do him any good, but he hadn't listened before. Why would he now? I am, Arthur said. We'll see, Whitaker said. You suddenly seem interested in doing your job, Sheriff. Cecil is a wanted man in 3 states and 1 territory, dead or alive. Is he? Arthur said. Alive? Whitaker shrugged. Let's see. He yelled over his shoulder. Mr. Elijah! The wide doors on the warehouse parted. Men, also wearing black coats and hats, pushed the doors out. Elijah, tall and lanky, appeared from the shadows. He held a rope, pulling it after him. The rope went taut, and Cecil stumbled out of the warehouse. He had been beaten, his face a morass of bruises and deep cuts, blood from his right temple pouring down his cheek. His eyes were shut from swelling, but he was alive. No, Callie went to rush forward. Arthur grabbed her arm. Callie? His voice was firm. Her vision cleared. 14 men now stood behind Elijah, all with a pistol at their side and rifles in their hand. That didn't count the 2 men with Whitaker. too many. Maybe not for the red scarf 20 years ago, but now? Workers scattered, a few running, most trudging back into the barracks. Cecil went to his knees. He wore only a torn shirt and pants. He sputtered blood from split lips. "Sorry, Callie, Hush now, Cecil," Callie soothed. "Whitaker," Arthur growled, "you can't do this. As sheriff, I'm going to take that man. He'll get a fair trial." Whitaker shook his head. "Time for fair trials is over. The paper said dead or alive." Arthur's breath hissed, steaming in the cold air. "Then why is he alive?" "Because of me," Callie said. Arthur turned sharply to her. "What?" Callie didn't take her gaze from Whitaker. "Get me to sign. They need my signature." Arthur spun back on Whitaker. "That's illegal. You can't threaten to—" "Ain't about legal," Callie said. "Never was. About money. About their idea of progress." Arthur released Callie and took a step toward Elijah. "Not like this. I'm taking Cecil with me. Now." "This piece of dirt is a murderer." Elijah raised his chin. "You had your chance, Morris." Arthur stopped 5 yards from Elijah and placed his hand on his pistol. "Release him. Now." Elijah laughed. "What are you going to do, Sheriff? Take on all these men on your own?" Elijah's left hand held the rope. The other hovered over his pistol. "I won't let you murder him," Arthur said. "I'll do what I gotta do, and you'll be the first." A fierce gust blew snow into the air. Callie wiggled her gloved fingers, keeping them loose. "Sheriff," Whitaker said, "let's not do anything." In less than a heartbeat, Elijah drew his pistol and fired, the shot echoing over the snow-covered plains. Arthur froze, his pistol dangling from his hand, not fired. He crumpled to the ground with a crunch of ice. Callie leapt to his side on her knees. She rolled him over, a bloody hole in his chest. In the heart. A pro shot. Arthur's eyes stared blank, dead. Callie's shoulders slumped. "Mr. Elijah," Whitaker said, "that was not what we discussed." Elijah tugged on the rope, and Cecil tumbled forward, landing at Elijah's feet. Elijah pointed the smoking barrel of his pistol at Cecil's head. "Mr. Croatan is tired of waiting, Mr. Whitaker," Elijah said. "Tired of waiting on you to take care of an old woman and an Indian. So am I." Callie looked up from Arthur's body. "It was you. You killed Harris." Elijah nodded. "The town couldn't take the hint. You couldn't. But now you're here, surrounded." "Wait," Whitaker said, holding up his hands. "We need her signature. It's the last one." Elijah shook his head. "No, we don't. Not with a bullet in her head." Everything seemed to slow. Her vision extended, gathering every man, calculating which to shoot first, where to move, how to attack and defend, how to kill every last one of them. She stood slowly, her hands out at her side. They twitched. Then she stared at Cecil. "I'll sign," she said. Whitaker started. "What?" "Let Cecil go," she said. "Give him to me and we'll leave. You'll never see us again. I swear it." Elijah scoffed. "We can't trust her, Mr. Whitaker. You saw that file." "Shut up, Elijah," Whitaker said. He held her gaze. "You'll sign?" "Whatever you want," she said. "The house is burned to the ground. My herd half gone. You win. Just let him go. Let me take him." "Whitaker," Elijah said, "she's been after the investors, has their names, been a criminal her whole life. We can't let her go. Not now." "No, Callie," Cecil groaned from Elijah's feet. "Don't." "I will go," Callie said. "I swear it." Whitaker's jaw tightened. But if you kill him, Callie said, then that's it. You're all dead. Elijah bent lower and snorted like an animal. Sorry, old lady. Too late. You should have signed when you had the chance. For something that broke her world, it was small. A slight tug of metal by a finger that released a hammer that hit a round, that sparked a small explosion, that released a ball of metal, that raced through a barrel, and then the air, and finally into Cecil's skull. Elijah, no, Whitaker said. But words can't stop bullets. Never could. Cecil fell to the ground. His brains and bones splattered over the snow. Elijah released the rope. She let Elijah stand straight and face her, the pistol held out to his side. She waited for the slight breeze that flapped the right side of her leather duster, opening it just enough for her hand to grab her pistol. Even with the gun in his hand, he wasn't fast enough. She drew the pistol and fired in one motion, less than a heartbeat, less than the tick on a pocket watch. In 40 years, she had never met anyone faster, and still hadn't. Her bullet met his forehead and took the top of his hair and hat off in a cloud of red. The shot rang in her ears. "Whoa!" Whitaker screamed while 14 men leveled guns at her. "Wait!" Ironic, these men listened to Whitaker when Elijah had not. They all halted. "Callie," Whitaker said, "listen, if you sign you can go. You're right. It was all Elijah. But now he's dead. No one else has to die." "Elijah was right, Mr. Whitaker," Callie said. "It's too late." Callie pulled the red scarf up from around her neck, placed it over her mouth, and hung it on the bridge of her nose. "You're all dead."
Okay. Yes. Oh, that was a phenomenal episode in my opinion.
Okay.
IMHO in my humble opinion. But I liked where you took it. I liked the action. I liked the setup. I got excited because I was like, I got to write the shootout scene.
Booyah.
I got to write the big shootout. One of the things I did like, and I don't know if you saw me writing as you were reading, but I feel like this chapter that you wrote had a couple very quotable lines in there.
Oh, yeah?
And some of my favorite ones was she barely felt the cold, but the sun didn't warm her either. Like, she's got the cold-hearted nature already, like, inside of her. And she's, like, cold in her focus, but she's not feeling the physical cold. But the sun's not warming her either. Like, I like the way you kind of contrasted those two together there. And then words can't stop bullets, never have. Like, there's so much in that. Like, her past, she's like, everything I've ever known, people have begged, pleaded, but words don't stop bullets. They never have. Like, that's just such a great statement right there. Like so cold-hearted. That's something a killer would think, or not just a killer, but someone that's had experience with guns and being around, death and
violence
and violence and hearing people beg for their life or hearing people beg for it to stop and it never has. And then you ended with a really strong one. 40 years, she never met anyone faster and still hadn't. Like, you were able to give the listener the follow up to the action without actually stating the action. Like, okay, like she's this fast, faster than the tick on a pocket watch. 40 years, she's never met anyone faster, and she still hasn't, which means he's dead. Like, she got him. Even though he had his gun drawn already in hand,
right?
He still wasn't faster. She's never met anyone faster. So we'll see in the next chapter. We'll see if she meets someone faster.
Hey, man.
You know you don't have to be faster when the odds are not in your favor.
That's right.
The way they are. At least 16-1 at this point.
At least.
Well, so here's and maybe I don't want to give my hand away too much.
Okay.
But I feel like there's a major theme to our story that has sort of been in the background here. Didn't play out at all in this episode that I really want to make sure takes a spotlight in the next episode.
Okay.
To tilt things in her favor.
Okay. I think I know what you're saying.
Let's talk about what you did do. Let's talk about what we do know and what has happened.
What happened was,
first off, this Bavarian is
nice.
It's nice. It's subtle in its flavor, but that's actually really big since it's a 9.7%. Like, to be able to keep a subtle flavor and have that big ABV. So that has happened. That's good.
That has also happened.
But Arthur, so we had been talking as just the three of us as writers.
Yeah.
We knew at some point we wanted, Arthur. It's funny because he was supposed to be more of like,
my idea initially was he was supposed to be an inciting,
a red herring.
Oh, a red herring and an inciting incident for her.
Yes.
Like she wasn't going to get involved, but he had to stick his neck out and get killed.
Yeah.
But we never could write that. Like, we never
the
put
way
that
we
together.
I developed him as a new relationship. Like, she just was meeting him, so we're like, oh, well, we can't kill him off right away. Let's develop this. And then, he got shot earlier in the season, and we were still like, no, I don't think he's ready to die yet.
It never worked story-wise for me for him to die.
So
even though I wanted him to.
Now at this point, and that's why I think it was important for us to develop the last two episodes, the last two chapters, to develop sort of bringing the tension not so much between Whitaker and Callie or even Whitaker and Arthur, but to establish that there was, some working of interest against each other between Callie and Arthur.
Yeah.
Like, he was trying to be the sheriff. He's trying to go by the book. He's trying to be the hero. Callie has never wanted to be the hero, knows the cost of being a hero, and knows how to do things, off the books and not by the letter of the law. So when it came to my chapter and Katie's chapter, I'm glad we got to kind of dive into that a little bit, because now that made it so much clearer when you got to the scene here. Like, as they're writing in, he's pontificating about how it's going to be done by the law, and he's kind of sort of scolding Callie or telling her, hey, we're not doing it your way, but also he's talking about how he's not going to let Whitaker do it this way either. And when he gets shot and dies, that just unfettered Callie, because now there is no lawman trying to do everything right and trying to keep everything by the book between the two different parties that desperately want what they want, and they're going to do what they can to get it. Callie wants Cecil, and she's even willing to give up to the point of conceding and saying, Whitaker, you got it. You can have my signature. Just give me Cecil, and I promise we'll go. And Whitaker's at the point where, okay, we finally got what we've been struggling for.
Whitaker
this whole
actually
time.
got his goal.
Yeah.
He got it. And that's why, in order for me to push it forward, I had to put another character in there that was like, no. And what to me, what Elijah says makes sense, right?
Yes.
What do you mean?
Too late.
I can't let her go.
Yes.
She's got the ledger. She's got all that information. I mean, like,
she knows too much. She's proven to be someone that follows up on the things that come against her, the things in opposition to her, she has cleaned out, effortlessly throughout all her career.
Yeah, and the only reason Elijah didn't kill Cecil was because he got what he wanted. Is Callie was there.
Right.
Hey,
yeah.
Callie and the sheriff are there outside of town.
Yeah, on their own terms.
On their own. And so yeah, I mean, I had so much fun writing it. After I wrote it, I was like, I don't know how they're gonna feel about this because I didn't get to blow anything up.
No,
but I didn't feel like I felt like it was
you shattered Callie. Is what you
was
did.
like, I put her in the position of there's no going back now.
For me, for when I try to write a death scene, especially of a main character. I love the way that you pulled back and talked about it, and you're like, it was such a small action that shattered her entire life, or however you said it.
Yeah.
And that I really appreciate that because that's what I like to do. I try to do when it comes to something like that is don't just say it's happening, don't just even show it's happening, but like really dive into what is happening. It's just a finger pulling a little piece of metal that starts off this chain reaction that is now going to instigate a much bigger chain reaction. So I said, when you killed off Arthur, you unfettered her.
Yeah.
And then when you killed off Cecil, you unhinged her.
Yep.
And so now we've got an unhinged and unfettered Callie. Yes, she's older. Yes, she's outnumbered. But
yeah, and I tried to set up like he was the reason because you had kind of set up like she saved him from the hangman's noose kind of thing.
Right.
Like, we'd kind of through the dossier and we kind of set up this whole thing.
yeah.
And so I wanted to set up like he was the main reason she didn't go back to that life.
Right.
Like she said, okay, well, we're going to try to get away. And so I tried to kind of reinforce that a little bit in the the beginning of the episode, trying to reinforce that like I had to save him like he saved me, and almost like that, like
we saved each other.
like we saved each other, and we tried to run, but
Yeah.
now I know we can't run.
That was another good quotable line from this episode.
And
we saved each other, I think. And the way that you had Whitaker not being the man in power, like revealing that there's someone kind of ahead above him, not really above him, but someone that's definitely has influence and pull on what Whitaker's goal is. And so that put Whitaker kind of on this, hey, let's not lose our cool here. Let's not fly off the handle. Like he was trying to almost mitigate the situation as well, trying to stop Callie from going crazy. And then he's having to stop Elijah. Like he's like, Elijah, that's not what we talked about. This was not the plan. And yet it's kind of out of his control. So I liked it.
Yeah,
that
Whitaker
wasn't the one like calling all the shots there.
Yeah, Whitaker is not in my mind, Whitaker was not the man of action.
Right.
He's not a gunslinger.
He's the visionary.
He's a businessman.
Yeah.
He's a leader. He's a manager, maybe. I mean, like he's a visionary. He's not the gunslinger. And so when it comes down, that's just the way I envision it. Like when it came down to violence, he doesn't know what to do.
No, he's the talker.
He's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like all I needed was a signature.
Yeah.
Like this isn't me. Like he's totally out of his element.
Yeah. So I like the way you said that. And I mentioned earlier that I just watched John Wick last night. And then when I read this scene, it to me it kind of played out in that same dichotomy between not so much the villain in that movie, but the bad guy versus the good guy, where John Wick is trying to get revenge or justice against this other mob boss's son that he used to work for. They used to work together, and so that's how they know each other, and that's how he knows. Like, you don't want to mess with John Wick.
Yeah,
you just
right?
We want to appease him however we can.
Yeah.
And so he tries calling him up, and he's like, hey, can we do this civilized? And so it had that same feeling there, where like the guy that is usually in power and usually the one that everyone else is listening to and hear to is the one saying, hey, we should try and work this out. We should try and come to terms here. But there's a third party that's kind of pitting Callie and Whitaker against each other and forcing their hands to come to a head.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about John Wick when I wrote this episode, but you're totally right. Like that's a good comparison, because in that movie, what makes, in my opinion, I like all of the John Wick movies, but that one's the best.
Yeah, the first one
as a story.
Yeah,
because it's so simple, but you're right. He's like looking at his dumb young son and going, why would you mess with this guy?
Yeah.
Like, this is the last guy you should mess with. And yet it's this other person who's really sowing the chaos. It's the young man who's sowing the chaos.
Yeah.
And John Wick is comfortable in the chaos.
Yeah.
Just like Callie is comfortable in the chaos.
Yeah, it's where they come alive.
Like, that's actually who she is. And that's what I kind of wanted to show. Like, this is actually who she is. That's why she's getting like you said. I'm glad you noticed it, because it was like she's riding up thinking, I know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
I've been in these situations before. There's nothing you can do, Arthur. There's no reason. There's nothing.
Yeah,
and we'll try, but I know how this is going to go down.
And I like that Katie alluded to it a little bit in her episode, where she was taking toll of Arthur, and she was calculating like where his bullet shots, who around here is going to step in, what are my exits and all that. And then you showed it again where her how did you say it? Her vision went outward or whatever, extended, and she started calculating, okay, who's going to be first to pull, or who should I attack first. Very John Wick in the application of action there, but that's the type of character she is. That's who she naturally is. Who she has been in this season of her life is really more of a muted version of who she used to be. I'm envisioning in my head sort of where it's going, but I know I won't really see it until I start writing it.
Yeah.
And
that's always the fun thing.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about this. Faithful listeners, I hope you guys have liked this so far. Like we said, this story is going to be wrapping up very soon. And we are actually going to forego the wheel of malfortune, because everything from here on out is going to be very
It's pretty clear what's happening next,
yes.
right?
Yes. So we'll just call it writer's choice. We'll just say,
we'll just do another writer's choice.
Katie got a writer's choice, Britt got a writer's choice, and now I'm going to have a writer's choice. I promise I won't do anything outlandish. There will be no tanks.
What?
I know. I'm sorry.
No green rocks or tanks?
No. Pterodactyls may come out of the sky. Who knows? I don't. She's got that that whistling ability that we haven't really played.
I wasn't going to mention that. I wasn't going to mention that.
I've already been thinking about it. So we'll see how fun it'll get and how gory. We're not technically doing a horror story here, but this last episode,
I did splatter blood and brains on the snow.
Yes, you did, man.
Or maybe Elijah did. I mean, I'm not responsible for that.
Yeah. Oh man, could you imagine writers being held responsible for, for their characters' actions? But you, a faithful listener, you can be held responsible for your actions when you share.
That's right.
Our stories and share our podcast and subscribe. We love it when you do that, and we appreciate you guys being with us along this whole journey. Or if you're just starting out with us, we've got a couple different stories that you can go back to once this one wraps up. We've got sci-fi one called Singularity.
A couple sci-fi, but Singularity is more a traditional sci-fi.
Yeah. And our first story was Boneyard, which is kind of like a historical fiction sci-fi.
Yeah.
Little fantasy.
And there were more writers on that one, so that one has its own. It's actually pretty fun.
Yeah,
it's not as cohesive of a story maybe, but it's definitely fun. If you go back and listen to it, it's pretty fun.
And then I think one of the more fun seasons we had was our murder mystery one where we
that was fun. I thought you were going to say the competition of the flash fiction, because that was really fun.
Yeah, season 2
really
flash
fun.
fiction competition was awesome because we got to go through so many different genres.
We did,
and we got to go through like all these head-to-head battles of people's writing styles, and seeing like just taking a title of a story and then a genre, and seeing how different, 2 or 3 different writers could, extrapolate just from those few little requirements.
That was a really fun season to me.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't win, but I thought it was a really fun season.
It was. So we've got nowhere else to go from here other than just to the next episode, and also go listen to our Interbrew episodes. We're doing some Mandalorian ones. Yep. Raise a glass to inspiration. Stay inspired. We'll see you guys on the other side. I was wishing, I was like, man, I wish Calamity Jane was there. I wish she just brought her whole herd with her. I don't know. I was thinking through, like, man, how can I get more dinosaurs involved in this final scene here? And I'm sure I'll find a way, because of course they probably have some sort of labor saurian working at this factory somehow.
Wow,
So,
maybe.
yeah,
Maybe.
I will not disappoint. Hopefully.